Hey everybody, good evening, good evening. Happy Monday. If you are jumping on live, if you could say hi in the chat, that would be awesome. Let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you are watching the replay, just let me know that as well. Just say hashtag replay. Hope you've had a good Monday so far. And I know a lot of people watch these on replay. So don't be quiet in the chat. I do circle back around and read those. So if you have any questions or if something really resonates with you, please put your reaction in the chat, any questions, any comments. And we're going to talk about ADHD at work. And we're going to talk specifically about being bored at work and how to get motivated, right? Because we get bored very, very easily. So if you're watching live, don't be a stranger. Say hi in the chat. Let us know that you're here. Let me make sure I'm streaming. Okay, on my phone here. Yes, good evening. Hey, everybody. Good to see you. So, at work, instead of scrolling through Facebook again and all of that, I'm going to give you some tools to kind of help you transform normally very boring, tedious tasks into stimulating activities for your ADHD brain. Are you ready? And guess what? These tips work for home chores as well. It's not just for the office. So, you may be the kind of person that just sits there in front of your computer and you're thinking, I'm so bored, and you're just watching the clock. But boredom stresses people with ADHD more than people who have not been diagnosed with ADHD. In fact, research suggests that boredom plays a key role in three main ADHD symptoms: inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. So inattention, if you're bored with a task, you lose focus and you forget details, you make careless mistakes, or you doodle and daydream. And if you're bored, that impulsivity kicks in. If you constantly find yourself saying, oh, I'm so bored at work, then anything, an incoming message, a phrase that you overhear from the next cubicle, or a novel idea that pops into your head, any of that seems more interesting than what you're working on. And so you impulsively open up your email. You may eavesdrop or butt into the nearby conversation, or pursue that novel idea, even if it's irrelevant, because you're just impulsively going to react. And then hyperactivity, boredom makes you squirmy. So you invent a reason to walk down the hall or go to the restroom, even if you don't have to, because you're bored. And so you're not as productive that way. See, ADHD involves, scientifically, it's an inadequate activation of the chemical dopamine across the synapses of the brain. And dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's active in the kind of the reward section of our brain, the circuits there. It carries a wave of kind of good feelings, satisfaction through our brain. We do certain things. And by rewarding us, it encourages us to keep doing them. So it increases our focus on the task at hand. And people with ADHD have less diffusion of dopamine in the brain synapses than people without ADHD. So they don't get that same degree of satisfaction from doing ordinary tasks. And that lack of satisfaction is felt as boredom. And it saps a person's motivation to continue. So the brains of people with ADHD are always looking for interest, more physical or mental stimulation. And when they're really interested in something, they're going to focus on that. And suddenly the executive function of their brain seems to work well. But attention is activated best in when something's new. So boring tasks are hard to stick with. I mean, it just kind of makes sense, right? Interest keeps us going. So what are your elements of interest? Escaping or shaping boredom is a critical skill for people with ADHD because their ability to sustain focus at work or at home really is neurologically dependent on the stimulation of interest in your brain. So escape boredom by opting out of situations that don't fall into your element of interest. If you can, sometimes you can't control that, but if you can, and you can shape boring situations that you can't escape by bringing your elements of interest into them. So interests vary from person to person. Almost everybody's interested in novelty, something new. But some people prefer to stay with what's familiar or what they've already mastered or things that offer little risk. Some common elements of interest for people with ADHD are risk-taking, problem-solving, really excelling in skills, social interaction, speed, applause, rhythm, color, romance, surprise, action, suspense, humor, and multisensory stimulation. So to identify your elements of interest, think about activities that are pleasant or joyful or satisfying to you. And then kind of break that down, assess in detail the elements that these activities offer. For example, maybe as a child, you love to build walls and roads and piles of dirt. So that hands-on kept you engaged. And today you don't play in dirt piles, but maybe you need to be drawn to hands-on activities like physically repairing things or planting in a garden, working on a car, getting your hands on things that may represent one of your enduring elements of interest. And let's say you take a job with a charitable organization because maybe altruism is one of your strong elements of interest. But your job, what you do in that job is managing budgets. And that's the same thing that you might do for any big company. So you never really meet the people that the company helps. That may be not a good fit for you. Might be time to find a new job. On the other hand, suppose you're in a job that you'd love. I have almost 20 years in education. So let's say you love little children and you're teaching a class of 7-year-olds and you're just on all day. You never sit down. You get down on your knees and you interact with the kids in your class. They're eager to learn. You're funny, you're creative, you sing songs, you draw pictures. You're like a performer with an audience. Social interaction, nurturing, humor, applause, and hands-on. Those are all kind of elements of interest for you. And you get excellent results as a teacher. So you're offered a promotion to the job of principal with more money, more prestige. But stop, think about it. What does a principal do all day? Not the same thing as a teacher. It looks like maybe she sits at a desk and talks to other adults. Is that fun? Not for you. So stick with teaching. You have to think about those things. Shape boredom. Let's say your job is boring. Okay. A lot of us might be in those type of situations. People tend to do less in a boring situation, and idle time is even more boring. So don't do less when you're bored, do more. Think up things to do, devise useful projects, learn new skills, become an expert, make new contacts, help other people. Whatever adds your elements of interest to your work, that's going to increase your energy and your performance. So rewrite your job description so that it adds interest and leaves boredom behind. And you may propose it to your boss, or you may just keep it to yourself. If you do let them know, they might be impressed with your enthusiasm and your initiative. Maybe that do more approach is going to dispel boredom outside of work. For example, if you're a stay-at-home mom or a caregiver, They got plenty of things to keep them busy, but they're not always happily engaged. So learning or expanding an interest, like maybe writing, playing a musical instrument, painting, doing yoga, socializing on the internet, all of those things add elements of interest, including the challenge of learning something new, novelty, hands-on stimulation. All that brings sustained focus. Now, another element of interest for a lot of people with ADHD is urgency. We're last minute people. Urgency involves a little bit of fear, and we often feel that as excitement in our brains. So when you're doing a boring record-keeping task, make a game out of it. Pretend the IRS agent is observing you the night before the tax filing deadline, and you say out loud, the next deduction is clear. I have the documentation right here. I'll write it down for you, and you're just making a game out of it so that you're creating a pretend urgency. And when you're done, you can imagine them saying, okay, then no problem. You're good. We all got certain boring tasks to do in any career. I mean, let's say for you, adding a hands-on component to tasks is important for you to maintain your focus. Sometimes being hands-on is not the most efficient way to do your job, but in the long run, it pays off with more careful attention and goodwill. There was I read an illustration about a custom window designer who arranged to help install his creations. So he could have just sat back and designed them, but that gave him a break from his detailed computer drafting. Being on the job allowed him to solve unforeseen problems right away, and it ended up improving his customer relations. So if you're an office manager in charge of financial decisions, maybe you do your work with a pencil, not a computer. I don't know. During boring faculty meetings, I know a teacher that actually did stuff with her hands while she was in the meeting, like she was knitting something or something like that. But it helped her pay more attention. But adding a hands-on activity can help with focus. So bring as many elements of interest as you can into every area of your life. Bring it into your job as well as home. So some creative ideas, make it new. So, if you've been putting off doing your billing, you dread the tedium, novelty or newness and a time limit. Those are things that you can bring in that make it a little more interesting. You promise yourself that you have to do it for this optimal focus time. Let's say you zone out after 30 minutes. You set a timer for 25 minutes, and when it goes off, stop. Now you get to start something new, either something more interesting, like making a phone call that's likely to go well, or getting up and walking around. But set a timer for the second activity and stop when the time expires, and then go back to the first task. And it doesn't sound like it would work, but it's sort of weird. It almost makes the first task feel new again, because your brain switched to something else and now it's coming back. So promise yourself a stopping point, repeat the cycle, go into, a new task when something gets old, and then go back. And when you stop the task, write down the step that you need to do next, so you'll know exactly where to start when you go back to it. And you can be creative. A lot of people with ADHD are daydreamers. So if there's something boring, you can use your imagination and imagine it's something different. Maybe competition motivates you. So maybe you're in a contest to organize the best or the fastest. Just pretend that. Make it a game. Pretend like you're in a competition with somebody and there are people watching you. and you're supposed to be organizing papers, and you've got somebody saying, you call that organizing, and you're like, I'm gonna show that person. And so you just make up this little, I know y'all think I'm weird. You just make up a little thing in your head. So if maybe applause is an element for you, so you can imagine that there's an audience cheering for you for each piece that you finish, and they give you a standing ovation at the end. If altruism is a strong element of interest for you, imagine that every segment of the job that you complete provides a scholarship for an underprivileged student to go to college, or something like that. And you just imagine their joy and their gratitude when they learn that your work is making their enrollment possible. You can make a boring job social, pair up with somebody to get the job done. A lot of ADHD people like to use a body double during, boring things. You can talk if it doesn't take your brain power away from what you're doing. But if it's something complicated, then you can just keep each other on track by talking through the steps. And, always make it fun. There are a lot of, I like color. There's a lot of things that you can add color to make it a little more fun. If, maybe put some music on, maybe make a rhyme out of something you're supposed to be remembering. I knew somebody that had a hard time remembering people's names. And so they would sort of sing, like they made up this little, kind of like a little rap song to commit the names to memory. But learning to pay attention to the elements that keep your interest high, and then intentionally and creatively adding them to otherwise boring situations, that's going to ease that burden of boredom in your job and allow you to focus. And then it's also going to allow you to get things done. So try some of those things. Just think about what interests you and how can you bring those elements of interest into what you find boring, and see if it works for you. So let me know in the chat what you think about that. I'm gonna go back and I haven't really been looking at the chat here. I'm gonna go read these comments, and if you're watching the replay, let me know. And if you've been kind of just lurking in the background and you're live, please say hi. Let me know where you're tuning in from. So I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next time.